And welcome to a bonus second edition of Book and a Beverage this week. Tonight I have the distinct pleasure of talking to Chris Grooms, and he is the author of 3 books now. Hold on. Sorry. Let me go away. There we go. Sorry. My YouTube started playing. Give me an echo. So he is the author of 3 books from the Tales of Guyane. Is that right?
Okay. Guyane is correct, yeah.
And the current book that was just released this week is Rise of the Archmage, correct?
That's correct.
I will show people. I have the first book in the series that I got from Chris when we met at the Hanover Book Festival. But tell us about Guyane, the world, and then we'll go more into detail.
Right. So thank you for having me on, Mike. I appreciate it. I am humbled by your graciousness to allow me to be a part of this program. Guyane is an epic fantasy world that I created. The genesis of it came out of some Dungeons and Dragons modules that I wrote for my youngest son and I to go through. He graduated from college and went off and got married. And so I needed an outlet. And the timing of this was actually perfect for me because COVID hit. There was nothing going on, and I didn't want to waste that time. So I took some of those adventures and turned them into the books that I have published. I would like to backtrack a little bit. Wolf Blackhawk, who is the hero in books 1 and 2, he is actually a D&D character that I created back in the late 70s. And I never explored his backstory, but Legends gave me an opportunity to do that. And then I followed that up with Ripley's Keep that continued that on. And then Rise of the Archmage really showcases the true subject of the series, which is more of the Galantry.
And we have our first comment saying that this author is amazing. Pi 7896. If that person's not in your fan club, they are now.
That's most likely my youngest son. He's been immensely helpful in this entire process. He's got a great imagination, and I value his input.
So tell me more about Blackhawk. What is he like personally?
Wolf Blackhawk is, when he starts out, he's a teenager. He is a skilled horseman. He is deadly with bow and blade. His riding skills and his bow skills come from his mother, Helen Blackhawk, who is a matron from the horse tribes. Which they are from Beth Amin, which is a neighboring country of Blackhawk. And he gets to ride with his dad on a patrol after orcs have raided the Blackhawk territory. And he gets his first taste of combat as a 15-year-old. And then it moves on from there. The orcs overwhelm Blackhawk. He's in the midst of the fighting as a 15-year-old. And he loses his father, loses his uncle, and flees to Beth Amin and finds his mother and brother. And so that's where the tale really picks up is Wolf and Seth and his mother Helen, rebuilding their lives in another country.
Interesting. And so, is it a spoiler to tell us who the Archmage is, who is rising in book 3?
It would be a spoiler to do that. I think there's a lot of folks that, especially my beta readers, my 2 sons, that know who the Archmage is. But yes, it would be a spoiler alert to let that one out of the bag.
Okay. So tell me more about your world. You got the Horse Lords and you have Blackhawk. Is that the kingdom also, as well as his last name?
No, that's a great question. So Blackhawk territory sits within the Crusteri Confederation. And so one of the benefits I have right now in exploring some of this is actually defining what Crusteri is. Blackhawk was named for a legendary character named Caleb Blackhawk, which I haven't explored his backstory too much yet, but there's many of Blackhawks that live in the Blackhawk territory. It gets kind of confusing at times, but it's also kind of fun to roll through that. You've got the horse tribes that live in Beth Amin. If you think about Rohan,
Right.
I would have to say that they are closely modeled on Rohan with slight variances in there. And then you've got some other nations that surround them that kind of put their head in the sand during this initial onslaught by the orcs and the invading armies. And then one of the things that Wolf does is he travels to a place called High Point, and High Point is a city-state that was founded by the original Archmage of Guyand by the name of Felix Galantry. And they have, the princes of Aurories have strayed from his teachings. And so they are manipulative and cunning instead of being diplomats and advisors that they used to be. So it builds in a little bit of, in the second book, a little bit of political intrigue as Wolf and his companions try to navigate this scene.
Awesome. So I'm guessing, like every other fantasy author, Tolkien has inspired you?
Well, yes, Tolkien has, and we have to admit that he is the father of modern fantasy. But you have to tip your hat to Gary Gygax, who brought fantasy really into the modern world. I mean, his writings are technical and detailed, but if you read through some of his earliest stuff, with Dungeons and Dragons, there's really stories that he weaves into the technical writings that he does. Then I think you've got Terry Brooks. Terry Brooks is a fantastic fantasy writer, and I've consumed probably 98% of what he's written. So if Tolkien is the father, then Brooks is the crazy uncle that really brought this to light. And I love his writings. I love his style. His descriptions are fantastic. I think that there's that in there too. So I enjoy that. But I mean, J.A. Salvatore with his Drizzt series, I've enjoyed those. There's a wealth of fantasy authors out there that really can create worlds and describe things in minute detail and also give you the broad picture as well.
Be afraid, the Beard of Darkness is with us.
Yes, I'm looking forward to being on his show.
So, being of a certain age, like me, I have to ask, how many Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms books did you read? I tell people about 150, and I might be underselling it. Yes.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I have read that, and I've actually got one on my nightstand that I'm working through. But I set it down to finish James S.A. Corey's book number 9 in the Expanse series.
Oh, I need to get back to that.
Yes, those 9 books are some of the best written books I've ever read.
You know what makes me angry, though, about the Expanse novels? So I read the first one, and I'm like, what is this proto-molecule? Get rid of it. You have such an awesome system here with all the, the political intrigue between the Belters and Mars. And I'm like, you don't need this. Get rid of it. And then the whole series is about the proto-molecule. So the first book, I'm like, stop talking about that. No one cares. And I was like, oh, never mind. That's the whole series. But I love it. And Edva Sarla, the Indian woman, oh my God, my all-time favorite character.
I think she is probably one of my favorites as well. I absolutely love her, and the entire series is so well written.
Yeah.
From start to finish, the dialogue is clean, it's crisp, the storytelling is fantastic. I love how they switch the viewpoint between chapters, between 4 protagonists. It's just a fantastically written series.
Yep. So how many books is the Tales from Guyand going to be? The question that no author can ever answer truthfully, because the world always expands more than we think. But
right.
Go ahead.
Right. So I've got the first 3 written and they're published, which I'm extremely pleased with. The next book I'm working on right now is going to be Tales from Guyenne the Wraith, and it will chronicle Wolf's younger brother Seth. Seth exits Ripley's Keep about halfway through the book, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with him. When he first started out in Legends, he was sort of a minor character, but he really took on a life of his own. And I really liked how he progressed throughout the stories and his usefulness. And one of the characters that passes in Legends is Hezekiah Blackhawk, and they called him Kaya. He is Seth and Wolf's uncle, and he is a ranger. And through the course of this, I've kind of taken a different slant on rangers that you would see in Dungeons and Dragons and maybe in other writings. Mm-hmm. But what I did with Seth is he and his mother and a druid named Rainia take a remnant of Black Hawk refugees from Beth Amin, and they travel back to Black Hawk with the intent of freeing Black Hawk from the orc hordes that are oppressing their country. And so I've picked up from there. And then book 5 in this series, I remember you and I talking about 1.2, 1.1, 1.3 when we were talking in Mechanicsville. And really that's what these are. So Seth's story will be 1 or 2.1, and then Wolf actually ends up marrying at the end of Legends of Black Hawk a young lady named Maria, and she ends up ascending the throne to Beth Amin and becomes queen. And Wolf doesn't recognize this or doesn't know of this until halfway through Rise of the Archmage. So I want to explore her story as well. How does a young queen ascending the throne handle a nation that is at war? And how does she navigate the diplomacy? She's not a fighter. She's not a warrior, but she's a diplomat, and she's smart. So she has to rely on her cunning and her smarts to help guide this nation through there. Once I get done with Maria's story, then I will pick up the thread from Wolf and his companions after the Rise of the Archmage. So I've got the next 3 books planned. After that, we'll see where it goes.
Okay, spoken like a true fantasy author. So I am remiss because we call this a book and a beverage, and I have not yet asked you about your book and a beverage. So do you have ones ready or prepared to talk about?
Which one, the beverage or the book?
Take your pick. Whichever one you do first, I'll ask the other one next. So.
All right. So the go-to would be whiskey and cola. Okay. The book, are you talking about what I'm currently reading, what I'm currently writing?
Just one book that you want to shout out to the masses to tell them this is great and they should read it.
Thank you for putting that out there. I've got a friend of mine by the name of Sira Medeiros, and she is a very talented writer. She has done 2 novels, or one's a novelette and one's a novel. And I just give a shout out to her. Her second book, Secrets of Mother, is so well written, and I enjoyed it. And she's getting ready to release an anthology next year, early next year, that is a collection of stories by women veterans. And awesome. She's worked very hard on that. And Mike, I would recommend that you get Sira on your show as well. I think
I will ask you for contact information afterwards.
Yep. Yes, please do. She's entertaining, she's engaging, and she's got a great wit about her.
Cool. And let's see. So for those of you who have not watched any of these before, I bought a 18-pack of Corona in first week of October, and as you can see, I'm clearly a lush because I'm still drinking on that 18-pack. This will be 2 nights in a row I had one, so I'm clearly a lush. But I will be ending it soon. I have 3 left, so next year I will have to go out and buy beer for the quarter. So, and the book that I want to shout out about, I mean, we're talking about your series already, but I met David also at the Hanover Book Festival, and Harry Henkel, who's the author next to him, said that the best orcs ever written are David's. And he said he wouldn't go that far for the demons because a lot of people have done great with demons, but the demons are spectacular as well. I have not dove into this yet. I've not been able to dive into yours yet because I'm trying to finish this horrible, horrible book of mine that just won't end. But when it is done in like 10 days, I should be done with it. And then I get to read for Christmas. That's my Christmas present. So I get to catch up on that. So, yeah, I want to shout out to David's book, and he will be a future guest at some point as well on this show. Let's see. This is where Ro normally takes over and saves me, so I don't have to come up with questions. When did you start writing? And why did you start writing?
Well, I go back to my opening statement to you is when COVID hit and everything shut down, I didn't want to waste that time. I didn't want to spend that time in front of the television set. I wanted to do something that was creative, that could take the Dungeons and Dragons adventures that I'd written for my son and I started playing with those. And I started working those into stories, short stories, taking snippets here and there.
Yep.
And God bless my oldest son. I shared those with him, and he goes, you write these as if you're a dungeon master. You need to smooth these out. You need to take these and expand out to them. And I took that advice to heart. And I also I mentioned Sarah. She was my initial editor, and she was brutal. She's brutally honest. If you work with her, you better have thick skin, because she's gonna tear you apart. But in the end, when you're done and it's published, she's your biggest fan. She actually wrote a fantastic blurb for me on Ripley's Keep, and I appreciate that. But from there, I started going, and it started evolving and getting better. And then Sarah turned me on to my editor, Jeannie Rayner. And Jeannie is a godsend. I love this woman. I would take a bullet for her. She is kind. She's patient. She's a cheerleader. And we just work very, very well together. And it's a fantastic give and take relationship, back and forth. She handles all the nitnoid punctuation that I can't stand and I don't know, but at the same time, she offers fantastic suggestions on how to make the language stronger and even individual scenes stronger. My favorite part about her, though, is not only does she offer that constructive criticism, but she will flag entire paragraphs or sentences and give me, you get the thumbs up. Hey, great job. I love this. And I cherish those moments when I get that positive feedback from her.
So I agree with you. My actually Ro, my partner, is my editor, and he is still angry at me for one of the novellas that he just finished editing. He's like, "You absolutely cannot do that," and I'm like, "I'm doing it." He's like, "No," and I'm talking as a fan, but no, you can't. He goes, "There's nothing wrong with with the story, except I don't want that to happen." So the editor who can give and take and not be afraid that hurt your feelings or something, that they are, oh my goodness, can't say enough for them.
And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it's one of the things I've enjoyed about this whole process the most is it's been a family affair for me. My youngest son, Samuel, has been involved. My oldest son, Michael's been involved. My sister-in-law, Karen, has been involved. My wife is my biggest fan and cheerleader. And Rebecca Spangler-Locke jumps in and reads. I talked about my friend Jamie that does the cover art and the maps.
Yeah.
But one of the funnest things I've had is with my mother. And I sent her a copy of it and asked her to read Legends when I first started. She doesn't know anything about fantasy. She doesn't know Tolkien. She doesn't know Brooks. She didn't know what an orc, an elf, a drow. She didn't know what any of that was. But she researched it, and she Googled what an orc was, and a drow, and an elf, and a dwarf. And she's really learned through this whole process. And there was a couple of months ago, there was a Saturday morning after she spent reading the copy of Rise before it went to my editor. We spent 3 hours on the phone going through her comments, questions, and edits. And she saves every single thing I send to her, and she writes notes. And it's been a fantastic family affair for me. And I love that about the whole writing process.
So I have to give a shout out to Drew, who at this point is our first super fan, because he's been on a couple of these now, and he comments. So welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Drew, for joining us tonight.
And I wanted to ask you, have you had people who are not friends or family comment on your books to you?
I have. So yes.
Does that ever get old?
No, it doesn't.
No.
Rebecca, I mentioned her. She does. And then Sierra, I mentioned her as well. So I do have folks that are outside my family. But I think as an author, if you include your family, I think you need to give them permission to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Right. And as an author, when you put yourself out there, just like any artist, any musician, you're going to get negative feedback. You're going to get your feelings hurt. And you just got to push that aside and really focus on what they're telling you. Jeannie tells me all the time, it's your story. You have to make the final decision. But I want that brutally honest feedback. I want to know where there's plot holes. I want to know where there's things that don't make sense. I'll give you an example. Just recently, my sister-in-law, Karen, and I were going back and forth with some details within Ripley's Keep. And she said, this doesn't make sense. Your scene here is showing fall, but up farther north, you're saying it's less fall. So I love those catches. And sometimes you get nose blind to your own writing and you miss that. You get stuff out of sequence because you know the story, but yet it doesn't come out on paper the way it's supposed to.
So when I wrote my first book, I was so worried about that every chapter I actually have the date. And because I'm nuts, I decided to go with the Celtic calendar, which isn't used anymore. And furthermore, the Celts, their day started at sundown. So I'm trying okay, is it night? Is it day? That makes it a different day. Oh my God. And after the first book, I'm like, no, never again. And I've never had anyone comment one way or the other if they liked it or not. So clearly it doesn't matter. I'm not going through that craziness again. But I just had a question I have to ask you. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Marines.
You're a Marine. So my brother, who is former Navy, told me I had to ask you, did you write the books with crayons or did you eat them?
So that has been an interesting topic of conversation over the last at least the last month in my household. I've been associated with the Marine Corps for over 30 years. 20 years of that was on active duty. I don't remember Marines being referred to as crayon eaters until within the last year. So I'm not sure where it came from, but you could say what you want about us. Yeah, sometimes we're hey diddle diddle straight up the middle. We're stubborn, but if you look at the data, if you look at the numbers, we are one of the smartest services in the United States military.
I would not want to be against the Marines. Well, anyway, but definitely not the Marines.
Agreed.
So I don't know I think I told you back at the show, but I don't actually read physical books. So this book of yours, I do volunteer at the USO at the Richmond Airport. So now that I've been able to hold this up for your interview, I'm going to donate it there so another soldier can get your book and read it.
Perfect.
And hopefully they'll be enamored and they'll buy the next two.
Yes, hopefully they will. I think that's a great idea.
So that's where that is going now. This Sunday, I'll be there and I'll donate it. So thank you for your donation to the USO.
Perfect.
Let's see. I had another question and I just went blank. While I'm filling time, I just want to note that if you take Chris and I's hairstyles and put them together, we have one head of hair between us.
Yes, but I choose to keep mine short.
Rub it in, why don't you? Just rub it right on in. So what year did your first book, The Legends of Black Hawk, come out?
That one came out in 2022 is when it was released.
Last year. So you've published 3 books in a little over a year and a half, I'm guessing, or?
Yes, because I released Ripley's Keep in early 2023 and then now Rise at the end of 2023. So Ripley's Keep Ripley's Keep actually ended up being very easy to write, even though I altered the last half of the book. It actually came together very quickly. I had originally intended to include Ripley's Keep in Legends, but it got unwieldy, and as a new author, I needed to simplify it. So I cut that out and just focused on Legends and really got Wolf's story down, and then expanded out into Ripley's Keep because I introduced additional characters and some more complicated characters than Wolf is. Wolf is really pretty straightforward. My youngest son likes to refer to him as Captain America. He knows who he is. He knows what he stands for. Some of the other characters are a little more complicated than he is.
Yeah.
So Ripley's Keep came really quick, and then Rise of the Archmage was it took forever. I actually sent it out to my beta readers in January of 23, and it took me almost 12 months to get it tightened up and published.
Wow. So when you write, are you a plotter or are you a pantser or somewhere in between, like, virtually everyone?
I try to be a plotter, but that's just a lie I tell myself. I'm really a pantser. Every time I sit down in front of the television, whatever I'm watching, I've got my notebooks next to me. I remember reading something that Terry Brooks said in his book on writing. Names are important. In fantasy writing, especially, you don't want a lead character named Bob. Just doesn't fit. I mean, nothing against Robert or Bob or Bobby, but you need characters that have names that really kind of fit your fantasy genre. So I do that, and then I take notes. I constantly take notes. If I get an idea, I write it down. Even when I'm writing, when I'm watching television, whatever I'm doing, I always have those books close at hand to write those thoughts down, and then I try to weave them into the stories. If they fit. If they don't fit, I save them for something else.
Yeah, I have a recorder app on my phone, and I have 370 some odd times where I've just said, "Hey, I have an idea." And then when I go through, I'm like, okay, well, these are mutually exclusive, so I should pick one of them. Which one do I, But yeah, I'm like, I don't have the pad of paper. I just have my voice recorder. And I did some late at night. One night, I told myself the same thing 3 separate times, like an hour apart, like at midnight, 1 and 2. And yeah, and some of them I'm like, I don't even know what that means. But, and it's not because of drinking, as, we've established, because so it's just the brainwaves not working right.
Right. Or maybe they are working right. Fantasy writers are a little off.
No, this is true.
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to reading, or what are you reading now?
Well, like I said, I'm finishing up the Expanse series. I actually, before I got book number 9 in the Expanse series, I went back and read Terry Brooks's prequels to the Shannara series, and I highly recommend. There's 6 books that he uses to set up Shannara, and they're based on in the United States in its current stage, And boy, does he nail some of the problems that we see today. It's almost prophetic the way he sets these books up. I'm open to the next series. Well, I take that back. I need to read your first book. I've got it sitting on my shelf, ready to go when I finish The Expanse.
Okay, I just have one request. When you read this, Grommy, my main character, I tell people he's in his early 20s and he makes frequent, really poor decisions. So when you read this, just think of what would happen if he was at boot camp.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah, that one's next on my list to read. So after that, I'm open. I've got to. I was talking with my mother this morning, and making sure she could get online and see this. And I said, fantasy writers or fantasy consumers like series. They like a series. They want to get involved in a series. They get involved with the characters, and they want to see that come to a conclusion. And it's almost sad when it does come to a conclusion, because then you have to find a new series to be a part of.
And you have to say goodbye to these people. And
Right.
You want to know how it ends, but you don't want it to actually do so. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you want to know how it ends, but you hope it continues.
Yeah. So, do you have other series in mind that you want to write, or are you just one series right now, and that's what you're going to focus on?
I am. I'm going to focus on Guyane for right now. I've got enough material that I could probably do after I get done with Seth and Maria in separate ways, which is the aftermath of Rise of the Archmage. There's other stories I want to tell, all within Guyane. I would like to do some short stories as well. There's some side characters, there's some side action that I think that would be fun to kind of explore. But I want to get these other ones done first. So anyway, that's where I'm at with that. I think it could be easily 7, 8, 9 books. I know you and I talked at the fair. You've got all your covers done for what, 9 books?
7, but yeah.
So I'm kind of in the same boat with you on that.
So yeah, I have 7 planned. Then there's 2 prequels I want to write, and then 1 book probably set like 30 years after the events of the main series. So yeah. 10 books. Right.
And that's the thing about fantasy that I love is you can do as many prequels as your imagination lets you. And the way that Legends is written, it leaves it open to explore all those beginnings of those characters. Even before Wolf Blackhawk, was born, there's all kinds of places to explore.
So let me ask you this. I saw your map, and thank goodness, if you do not have a map, I will not read you as a fantasy author, because it must have a map. I mean, that's non-negotiable. But do you fill in that map with all your tales, or just like the center part, or what? Are you leaving more to be explored, or are you uncovering every rock?
Yeah, so there's more to be explored. What you see in Legends and Ripley's Keep is the map of the Southern Realms, which is really what's the best way to say that? Is really the power structure of the Southern Realms. And in Ripley's Keep, in Rise of the Archmage, my friend Jamie McGregor crafted a map of the Northern Dominions, because they're mentioned throughout the story, these different nations that send forces to attack the Southern Realms. So we made a conscious decision to include that map into Rise of the Archmage. When I get into Seth's book, I want to be able to provide a map that shows the Crystari Confederation, but specifically all the villages and towns within the Blackhawk territory. And I want to do the same thing in Maria's book for Beth Amin, and really give an opportunity to tell some of that backstory that I didn't tell in Legends and Ripley's Keep.
And how did you come about choosing like the Horse Lords next to a more traditional? Was there something in particular that grabbed your attention that you gravitated towards this, or what?
So I think the way I kind of played this out is Beth Amin is the horse tribes.
Right.
Horses play a very integral part in their society, almost to the point of being a religion.
Mm-hmm.
But you have this Black Hawk territory that is also very focused on horses, and you have this this unit called the Black Hawk Brigade that were cavalrymen that fought with Beth Amin 20 years preceding Wolf's Tail in the Goblin Wars. And so I just kind of expanded on that. I was blessed as a child to grow up on horseback. My father worked his tail off to provide us that opportunity. I love horses. I think they're an integral part to fantasy. And they bring a lot to the table, and it's fun to explore that. And so for Wolf and Seth, their mother is a horse tribe matron who married a Black Hawk and went back to the Black Hawk territory after the Goblin Wars. And she's really instrumental in their growth as horsemen throughout the stories. And they constantly refer back to her and her riding prowess.
Okay. So, question about the goblins. Are they Tolkien-esque, and as in they're just the bad guys, or do you do anything where you try to flesh out one or more of the characters that are goblins, or are they just bad guys like Tolkien does it?
So we early on in the writing process, my oldest son and I were kind of playing with some ideas on a focal point that was kind of a defining moment within the Southern Realms. And we sort of came up with this idea of the Goblin Wars. And when you say the word goblin, it doesn't necessarily mean goblins like you would see in Dungeons and Dragons. Right. But goblins is sort of a collective term for orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, that, those creatures of that ilk.
Right.
What I did with the orcs is if you had these raiding orcs that came out of the borderlands and hit these villages along the northern part of the Southern Realms, they wore a collection of tattered leather, pelts, chainmail. But then it progresses and they become more uniformed. They start wearing chainmail and scale mail, and they become more regimented, and they're led by half orcs. And so I kind of call out the half orcs as their commanders. And then the half orcs are large looming creatures, 6'5", 6'6", heavily muscled. And so that's kind of the take I took on the orcs. They're still very feral. Very natural creatures. And if you think about it, they're very much like humans. Their lifespan is a blink of an eye compared to an elf or a dwarf. So they sort of succumb to those feral instincts.
Cool. And are you committing the fantasy author mortal sin of not having a dragon in your world?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, no, I'm not. I was asked that question when we were in Mechanicsville, and I had to admit that yes, in Ripley's Keep there are dragons. It's kind of a fun take on them. I actually bring them out more in Rise of the Archmage, and I got to figure out how mechanically to make them work in future stories. How do they work? They're big, they're bad, they're ugly, they fly, they terrorize. How do I work that into my stories as I progress?
So you said before that you're more of a pantser when you write. Do you know what the ending is going to be, or are you discovering it as you write?
I do know that. I do know that. So when I sat down to write Rise of the Archmage, I knew at the end of the book I wanted the Archmage to rise. I wanted the Archmage to be recognized. She claims the father's staff, becomes the Archmage. I knew that's what I wanted to do with it. Getting to that point was the journey. That's what was so much fun about the book. Same thing with that I'm going through with Seth right now. I know where I want it to end. It's just getting him to that point. even in book number 5 that I'm going to do, Maria Blackhawk, I know where I want her to be at the end of this book.
Right.
So yeah, I guess I have an idea where I'm going, but I think also too, through the course of the writing, sometimes you change things and things don't work out the way you thought they would. And so maybe you adjust a little bit. And I think that's okay. I don't think you have to be married to your outline as you plod towards the end of the book.
So just to tell you, I would very much love to say that I'm completely a plotter, but just a second. So I decided that my world, fantasy world, I was going to commit the mortal sin of not having dragons and not having any races at all other than human. And then the second book I wrote, notice what's on the cover.
Centaur.
So yeah, I plotted out all these things and then I just threw it away and was like, okay, so what do I do now? So, but I mean, for me, when I'm writing, whether it's a chapter or a book, I have to know what the ending is so I know what I'm writing towards.
Right.
And I've tried outlining everything and then I'm like, well, that's boring. I don't want to do that. And then my characters start talking to me and I argue with them and I lose every time. I lose to the fictional character in my head and we do it their way.
Yes. I'm in complete agreement with you. But the use of dragons is fun. They are fun. They're fun to play with, especially if you can kind of twist them to your own, your own ideas, what you have in your head with them. And I don't think they have to conform to any sort of norm. It's your world. It's your world. You get to create it from start to finish. Yeah, you have influences, and I won't deny that. You know, Tolkien and Gygax and Brooks played a huge influence on how I write in my storytelling. But these are still stories that you get to tell, that you get to create, and I can't overemphasize that enough.
So when you were a young lad, did you read Gord the Rogue and the other books that Gary Gygax wrote?
I did not. No, I've only read what he published through TSR. They predated Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance. Right.
But Gord the Rogue, I gotta look. I swear he was in the city of Black Hawk. Something Hawk.
Oh, Greyhawk.
Greyhawk. Yes,
Greyhawk.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if I had it. But yeah. Love those books too. Yeah, when you said Gary Gygax, I was like, that's taking me back, 40 years or so.
Right. I think even the modern editions of Dungeons and Dragons, the 5th edition, the books are fantastic. The art and the writing is, and the slick cover feel of the paper is fantastic. But there's still his thumbprint all over that, and I think he deserves the credit for that.
Yep, absolutely. So are you one day going to write another series, or is this the one series that you have in you? Or is there something else that's like, when I get time and I win the lottery, or better yet, my series gets picked up by Netflix.
Right.
Then what is going to happen with Chris, then Unbound Chris Grooms?
I have enough material to write this until the good Lord decides it's time for me to come home. But I love what I'm doing with this series. I love the characters. It's been a blast to write them. Rise of the Archmage introduces some characters towards the end that in our adventures that my son and I play a key role in this war against the orcs and the invading armies from the north. So I think there's enough there. I really haven't thought about doing another series. I love sci-fi. I just don't know if I'm smart enough or if I'm a good enough writer to tackle sci-fi, especially after reading the Expanse series. It's so good. And the science is just so good. It would be hard to do anything better than that. But no, Mike, I'm going to stick with Guyan for now. It's fun. I enjoy it. I get lost in it. I chuckled at your comment about arguing with my characters. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I argue with them all the time. You know, you don't want to do this. Well, I do. Okay, so we'll do it your way.
And my next question, because you're the first person to say, no, I just want to stick with this one. Most authors have 37 directions they want to go. So I applaud you. I mean, this seems more rational, which makes you very much seem not like an author when you say things like that. But anyway, have you had any characters that were just bit players, side characters? I need you to do this, and then you exit stage left, and they're like, "Oh no, I am not done. You will write me in more."
Yes, I do. I really do. I've got two characters like that. One is Seth Blackhawk, which is Wolf's younger brother.
Yep.
He was not supposed to play a significant role in the stories, but he got agency and he just kept getting better and better and better. And then I introduced a young lady by the name of Rainia Locane, and she is a half-elf druid. And she was originally written to sort of be a comedic relief to Seth because he was so serious, but she took on a life of her own, and she's fun to write. She's funny. She does funny things. She does things that would be outside the norm for a young woman in this time period.
Yep.
And I love writing her character and letting her go, do things that are. She's fun. She's an absolute blast to write. So I have those are the two that come to my mind right off the top of my head.
So I can tell you, in my work, I have Kawina, who is Grami's sister-in-law, and she was just supposed to be, hey, sorry, your brother's such a jerk. He went to the bar and doesn't want to talk to you. Sorry, you know, just very apologetic. And now she's one of the most powerful people in my realm, and she's just supposed to be a beaten down housewife, and she's like, no, that is not me. So yeah, I mean, she's just, I'm like, Kawina, can I please do this? Is this allowed? I mean, I have to feel like I have to ask now. So yeah, authors are not right.
No, they're not. If I can, another one of my characters is Helen Blackhawk, and that is Seth and Wolf's mother. She's the horse tribe matron. And you know, at one point I was reading Legends before it went to my editor, and I said, you know what? I'm tired of this woman just crying all the time. You know, woe is me, this and that. So I stopped all that and really gave her a voice in this. And she's become one of my favorite characters. She's a strong woman. She's a fighter, but she knows her limitations within this realm. And one of my favorite stories with her is when she first arrives in Blackhawk with her husband as a newlywed. Horse tribe women wear pants because they ride horses. That's what they do. Well, Blackhawk women don't. And so that was an affront to Blackhawk society that you have this woman wearing pants. And it was a fun thing to explore with her. And it kind of set her apart as sort of this fiercely independent woman. Yes, she loved her husband, loved her children, but she was still herself. And she's also fun to write to.
That's awesome. Let's see. So the next book, do you have a guesstimate when it'll be out?
So Rise of the Archmage is published. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. But if folks would like a copy that is personalized, they can reach out to me at talesfromguyand@gmail.com. I will gladly personalize one and send it to them. The next one that I have in the shoot that I'm working on, we've talked about that, is Tales from Guyan, and I'm calling it the Wraith right now. And that's sort of Seth's nickname. He's been dubbed that by the Blackhawk soldiers. And I have no idea when it's going to be out. Hopefully sometime in 24. I'm still plowing through the rough draft. I haven't even sent it out to beta readers yet. So I don't know. I don't know when it's going to be out.
And question that I always want to ask people, you may not want to answer, and that's fair. I had Ty the Reader guy is a booktuber, and I was talking to him and telling him how I was beating my head against the wall trying to get this done. He's like, well, if you're having trouble, just kill a main character. So is there anyone that you don't have to name names, but is there a character that you've killed off and people are like, what are you doing?
I've got one character in Ripley's that does die, and I don't think my youngest son has forgiven me yet for doing it. So that's a funny question because Wolf's rides a mare, and her name is Maggie, and Maggie has her own personality, and everybody recognizes that. She does funny things. She's an excellent warhorse. And everybody covets her, and I have been threatened with my life if anything happens to this horse. And I've been told, kill all the main characters off. I don't care, but if you kill the horse, we're done. I won't read anymore. In fact, we're not even friends anymore. So folks get pretty passionate about some of your characters.
I had one person tell me. She goes, well, book 2 is going to be pretty interesting because all the characters I like, you killed.
Yeah, I think there has to be some suspense in there. I think there has to be some vulnerability to your characters. No matter how powerful they are, they still need to be hurt. They still need to take damage. And I think you have to be smart about which characters you do kill off in your stories, and it has to be for a purpose. It can't
Right.
just be because
Right.
you're looking to create a buzz or whatever. It has to drive. It has, just like with your secondary characters and your dialogue, it has to drive the story. If so, in Legends, Wolf's father and uncle die, but it drove the story, and it shaped who Wolf and Seth are now, and they recall that, and that's one of the things that drives them to fight. So you've got to use that. I think you have to use it judiciously with your characters.
Yeah. I was on a panel with another author, and he said that he's talking to a fan once, and they said, well, you write first person present tense, so I know the main character can't die. And he just went, challenge accepted. And then when I was on the panel, he goes, look, I've written 8 books now, and in 2 of my books, the main character dies. Not telling you which ones, but I've done it twice already, so don't tempt me. I will kill anyone.
Right.
And
right.
I was just like, man, that is hardcore, but I have some surprises coming up in my books that people may or may not be happy with. Roe was not happy with several of them when he edited them. He's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah,
Right. I'm like, well, I am.
Exactly. The and when you mentioned the writer's block and just kill off a character, that is an avenue that you can use. But one of the things that I learned early on was simply what if statements. Write down, what if, this character dies? What is the ramifications of that to the story? And just kind of write that out in how it affects the rest of the story. And if it doesn't work, then get rid of it. But I think what if statements are powerful as you work through, writer's block. If you get stuck, take a look at it. What if?
Chris, because you said that, every single one of my characters is now going to be nervous. I'll be like, you don't want to do what I say, huh? Well, what if?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. So tell us one more time, what is your website?
So you can find me at on Facebook, either Chris Grooms or Tales from Guyand. I've got 2 pages that I post on. You can also find me at on Gmail at talesfromguyand at gmail.com. I take a look at it every single day. You and I corresponded off of that
Yep.
site. So I do monitor it regularly throughout the day. I will answer questions. You can send me a note and say you want to buy a copy of the books. You can buy all 3 books, and I will gladly personalize them and ship them to you.
And do you have any events coming up this year or early next year that you want to tell people about?
So I'm fortunate enough that I get to do another one of these interviews in about a week. I'm looking forward to that. And then I am actually partnering with Ciro Medeiros at Scares That Cares, the author con in Williamsburg in April of 24, and looking forward to that. Thanks to you, I'm looking through your list of the Comic-Con events in Virginia and Maryland, and we'll probably select a couple more of those to work. The Comic-Cons are great for fantasy authors. I mean, those are our people. They come dressed in costumes. They're there to purchase books and engage you, and it's just a great time to do those events. So those are the 2 that I'm looking at right now, and then I'll probably select a couple more. Something I would really like to do is my friend Jamie that does my cover art and my maps is in Denver, and I would really like to find an event to do in Denver and have him join me at the table and not only tell his part of the story, but also to sign the books and also maybe have some prints available for sale.
And you said in a week you're going to be doing another interview. Where is that at?
Let me give me just a second.
Do you have a name?
I do have a name. Give me just a second, and I will find that for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I'll take that to mean that this is the only thing that was important to you this whole week, and that's why it's not in your mind. That's how I'm going to interpret it.
I think that's a great interpretation.
Awesome.
That is a great interpretation. I am looking for his name right now. And it is, hold on a second. His name is Brian Nowak.
Okay, yeah. Actually, last night, Brian Grover was saying that he and the 2 Brians actually do things together. So that he told me multiple times that I should get in contact with Brian Nowak. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yes. And also too, I will when we get done here, I will send you Ciro's contact information.
Awesome. If you can send me Brian's too, I would much appreciate that.
I can do that too.
I will tell you, Matt from Beard of Darkness is on here, and he has made it his goal in life to interview every self-published fantasy author on the planet, I'm pretty sure. And he's probably a third of the way through us all. At least it feels that way. So you should always give him his channel a look at as well.
I actually have. I went out and took a look at it, and I've also provided him with a PDF copy of Rise of the Archmage.
Awesome. So yeah, Chris, is there anything else you want to mention that I did not get to?
No, Mike, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to get on here, to talk about the books, to talk about the writing process. Thank you so much for your time.
Love it. I mean, this is just a way for us to talk to other authors about author things. So love it. Hopefully that you sell a ton of books because of this. Or
I hope so. I hope so too. I've got a Caribbean island that's calling my name.
Awesome. Well, I think we have reached the awkward part where I hit end stream and then it goes on a few more seconds. So we just smile at the camera and wave awkwardly until we're finally off. So
all right. Thank you, sir.
Everybody. Take care.